Alright, so here's another video by the same guy. Elden Ring's biggest mystery is still unsolved. I believe Melina was the image used for the thumbnail. We reckon out this year or next would be awesome if it was released this summer. I doubt it'll be that. There's so many freaking games coming out this year. I hope it's next year. Oh my god. Like, I still have to play the new Zelda game, and then there's Diablo 4, and then there's Starfield, and I'm sure there's gonna be another game coming out that I really want to play. And then I still want to replay some Elden Ring stuff, and then I still want to do Bloodborne and Sekiro and all that. No chance this year? Okay, good. Good, because I'm hoping that it's next year. There's too much going on. Not enough time. Alright. Anyways, Elden Ring's biggest mystery still unsolved. Let's check it out.
Even back before Elden Ring's release, over a year ago even, there were a large number of questions that we had about the game's lore, about the story, and about the materials that we had been presented pre-release. And now we find ourselves almost a year after the game's release having answered most of those questions, combing through the lore in extensive detail. But there's one question that's persisted throughout that time, a question that was one of the first things we ever asked about the game's lore, that no amount of research, no amount of digging, and no amount of official material has answered for us. And that question is, who is Melina actually? Today we're going to explore literally everything we know about her character, all the rabbit holes that this exploration brings along with it, because the reality of this is that the facts concerning this part of the lore are very few and far between. But
I really want to see more about the Frenzied Flame ending with Melina. Like, this ending just makes me want so much more. You know what? And here's the thing. I would love like a book series based on it, but going into the different endings. Like, what if there was a Frenzied Flame series? I would love that. God. It'd be so cool to explore all the different things. No, not necessarily. Well, here's the thing. George R.R. Martin wrote the history of Elden Ring, and then the creators of Elden Ring took that information and turned it into a game. So they could even just ask him some questions, or they could go with whatever. Because as much as it is George R.R. Martin's story, it's not entirely just his creation. He was definitely the biggest influence in, like, the lore. Absolutely. But I'm pretty sure they just told him, write the history from, yeah, it was, what, 5,000 years before? And then they went from there. So they wouldn't necessarily need him, but I'm sure he would be down to have, like, some questions asked, and then they go from there. From Software haven't really done post-ending deals. Yeah, I wish they would. That'd be so sick.
ever since we first touched upon this mystery, it's only grown in obscurity, and to me is one of the most interesting parts of the entire story of this game. So as we dive in, you guys know I'm chasing down 100k subscribers, and if you enjoy all the mystery of Elden Ring and want to stay up to date on all the news surrounding this game, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It's a win-win for both of us. I think the best way to begin our discussion here is to start at the very beginning. When Elden Ring was first revealed, this trailer was almost uninterpretable. We had very little context, only a few leaks to go off of, and no idea of who our player character was going to be, or what the overarching story was at all. Fast forward almost 3 years later, and we got the first gameplay trailer for Elden Ring at Summer Games Fest in 2021. This was the first time we were introduced to Melina as a character, although we didn't know her role in the game or even her name, as she was purposely portrayed very mysteriously all throughout. After that, we began getting some promotional images which didn't really give us more information, but helped continue the conversation. And then later that year, we got to see this cutscene, and it told us a few things. Number one, that she would be the maiden character of this game, and that our player character would be joining an accord, meaning that she has her own motivations for helping us. We wouldn't learn more about this character until the network test.
I'm back again.
has her own motivations for helping us. We wouldn't learn more about this character until the network test for Elden Ring, when we got to play through roughly the first hour to 2 hours of the game. And we would learn 2 more mysterious things about Melina. That her main motivation for helping us out on our journey is to ascertain her purpose given to her by her mother inside the Erd Tree. And number 2, that she's not a maiden at all, and is actually violating the Golden Order by helping us. The speculation at this point in time was wild. With so little information about the world of the game, there was hardly anything to connect her character to and put in context of her overall story. But now we have the full game, and the reality is that we're still in that same situation as we were back then. We still know virtually nothing about this character. However, in the years since the game's release, we've been able to gather quite a bit of information, and so let's go through everything we know for a fact before we start speculating. As we stated earlier, she has her own motives for assisting us, trying to figure out what her purpose is, since at least in the state we find her, she's burned and bodiless, and appears to have lost her memories. But what she does know is that she was born at the foot of the Erd Tree, and is not actually a maiden. But despite that fact, she does have all of the abilities of a maiden, able to turn runes into strength, and guide the Tarnished to the Round Table Hold. But let's discuss her appearance for a minute, which is strikingly different to many other characters in the game. She has reddish brown hair, golden eyes, and one eye that's shut with a tattoo covering it. And the clothes she wears are the Traveler's set, which has a description that reads, worn by young women who set off into the world to confront their fate. So her character is painted as this young maiden who's only trying to figure out who she is. But it doesn't add up that way. She also has the unnatural ability to recite the spoken echoes of Queen Marika. We also come to find out that she's very proficient in combat, having 2 unique incantations that only she wields. One of which is a spell that spawns a miniature Erd Tree, and the other which casts golden rays down, similar to the spell that the Miranda flowers use.
Hell yeah.
But after we bring her to the Erd Tree, initially we find out that her purpose was that of the Kindling Maiden, as told in the description of the Blade of Calling, which is the weapon that she wields. But the exact purpose given to her by her mother was to offer herself as kindling to the Giant's flame, burning the Erd Tree so that the Tarnished could enter, and also subsequently sending them down the path of destined death. But if the player chooses to go after the Lord of Frenzied Flame ending, then we learn even more about her character, that she staunchly hates the Frenzied Flame. She believes there's still beauty and life to be had in the lands between. And while it is in need of death and discriminant, as she says, it doesn't need to be reduced to nothing. So if you go all the way down this path and become the Lord of Frenzied Flame, then you get a secret cutscene where you see a new form of Melina, where her hair is dark and singed, the eye that was open before is blinded, and her previously closed eye is opened and bears a bluish color. And that pretty much concludes all the real information we have here. For a character that was hinted at so much in trailers, she really barely appears in the game. And so that's where this idea that there must be more to her character comes from. So let's start speculating and trying to figure that out. Now the problem is that when you start looking into this, her potential lore ties into almost every other aspect of the game. And that's partially due to the fact that she's not referenced anywhere in the lore, is not referenced by any other characters, except potentially Shabriri, although that can be argued. So the way I want to approach this is by breaking it down into 4 main categories that have the most evidence, and those are that number 1, she was Ronnie's cohort.
You know, I was gonna say though, and I feel like a lot of people have noticed this, Ronnie also has an eye closed, but it's the other eye, right? So each of them have an eye closed with a marking. Do you think that that has anything to do? Like, there's no way that they're not related in one way or another. There's no way. Yeah, I don't know. If I feel like if you choose the Frenzied Flame ending, that there should definitely be something going on with Melina. Or Melina. However you would pronounce it. But Ronnie's body was a theory until we found it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is Ronnie's singed body. Here's the thing. If there wasn't Ronnie's body at the top of that tower, I would almost suggest that Ronnie's, like, spirit form in the doll is, like, a separated version of Melina. Because Radagon and Marika had 2 separate bodies, but were also the same person. So, like, But then they had their own personalities and their own wants. That would be kind of interesting if it was the same for Ronnie. Yeah, who knows, Sean? I mean, it might have absolutely nothing to do with it, but there's no way that it's a coincidence that they both have like a closed eye with a marking over it. And when she shows her eye, where is it? Right there. Blue kind of reminds me a little bit of Ronnie. Torrent does know a lot of important people. That's very true. Maybe they're sisters? Well, maybe. To a degree, maybe. I'm wondering how to word it with the whole Radagon America thing. Because she says her mother is in the Erd tree, which means her mother is most likely America. So, who's the father? You know? Is it Radagon? Is it someone else? She's got brownish red hair, but it's not like red, like would be depicted if the father was Radagon, I feel like it would be more red instead of being more muted. But at the same time, maybe that's just to throw us off. Who knows? Oh well, let's see what the video says.
Number 2, that she's the daughter of Radagon. Number 3, that she's a spirit created by Marika. And then number 4, that she is the character known in the lore as the Gloam-Eyed Queen. The first theory we have here begins very simply. When we first got the story trailer, people were quick to notice the striking similarity.
Sylvis does have some backup bodies in his basement, but I don't remember if a Ronnie body is there. Yeah, I don't know. All I know about Ronnie's body is the charred one at the top of the tower.
Between Ronnie and Melina. Most notably that Melina's face lines up almost identically to the spirit alongside Ronnie's. And it is quite literally a perfect fit. Far too close to simply be a coincidence. But we'll come back to that. When we first meet Ronnie, she introduces herself as Rinna and questions us about Torrent, who we received authority over from Melina. She then gives us the spirit calling bell, which she says was given to her by Torrent's former master. Now we know that during that time Ronnie was lying about her identity, and so it raises the question of, was she also lying about Torrent's former master? After all, the only two characters in the game that mention Torrent or even know of him are Ronnie and Melina, so there's a definite link there. But there's also a lot of very small evidence that connect the two together as well. Ronnie and Melina both dissipate into that ephemeral aura of blue light and stars. We can also see this same quality when summoning Torrent. Now it's never specified exactly what this is, but all three of these characters are spirits in some capacity. Melina also tells us when we meet her that she's burned and bodiless. To connect this to Ronnie, we also know that she in her state right now is bodiless, a soul inhabiting a puppet, but when we find her body atop the Tower of Liurnia, we can see that it's also burned. And funnily enough, we can see a very similar color of hair on her head. Take this into a lore aspect, we know that Ronnie was working with the Black Knives in the plot to kill Godwin, so it's interesting that Melina's movement and combat style is identical to that of a Black Knife assassin, and her weapon, the Blade of Calling, is essentially a non-corrupted version of the Black Knife, even bearing the same weapon art. And to go further down the lore path, Ronnie reveals to us that her goal is to go against the Two Fingers in the Golden Order, reminiscent of what Melina said at the beginning, that she was violating the Golden Order. So there's far too much evidence here to simply be a coincidence. There is almost certainly some connection between these characters, but as of right now, the extent of which is unsolved. One thing you'll notice as we go through these main points is that much of the evidence here is going to overlap. This next theory involves the idea that Melina may be a child of Marika and Radagon alongside Melania and Mikola. And this idea actually extends odd enough from the many butterflies that we can find around the map. There are 3 types of butterflies that you can pick up along your journey, those being the Aeonian butterfly, the nascent butterfly, and the smoldering butterfly. Now what's interesting is that the item descriptions of these butterflies tie them directly to the children of Radagon America. The description for the Aeonian butterfly reads, according to myth, these butterflies were once the wings of the goddess of Rot herself, which of course gives it a direct tie to Melania, who is the goddess of Rot. The description of the nascent butterfly reads, this butterfly appears as if it's just emerged from a cocoon for its entire life. And this of course gives it a tie to Mikola, who as we know is currently encased in a cocoon, waiting to emerge. Now we know that the only children of Marika and Radagon are Melania and Mikola, so the outlier here is the smoldering butterfly. And its description reads, an eternally burning butterfly found near wildfires and elsewhere, serves as kindling for a number of items. Now you may be able to see where we're going with this. As we mentioned earlier, Melina is known according to the item description of the Blade of Calling as the Kindling Maiden, which would theoretically give her a direct tie to the third butterfly. Now what's interesting is that Melania and Mikola were both born with a curse, Melania's curse being the Scarlet Rot, and Mikola's being eternal childhood. Perhaps Melina's curse was to be burned and bodiless. To look into more basic evidence as well, the family trees here are all coordinated by the first letter of their first name. The names of the children of Marika and Godfrey start with G, the children of Radagon and Ranala start with R, and the children of Marika and Radagon start with M. So there is a very clear pattern here. Melina's hair is also noticeably reddish, a trait seen in children of Radagon. But the question becomes, if she really was a child of Radagon, why is she entirely unknown? And for that, I'll leave it up to your own speculation. Once again, the evidence is going to overlap quite a bit on this next one, and here we'll explore the idea that Melina is an agent of Queen Marika, and it's a fairly straightforward one. When we first meet Melina, as we stated earlier, she tells us that she's searching for her purpose, given to her by her mother inside the Erd Tree. And as we see later on in the game, the only thing inside the Erd Tree is Queen Marika. So the logical conclusion here is that Queen Marika is both her mother and the one that gave her her purpose. This is reinforced by the fact that Melina can recite the spoken echoes of Queen Marika at churches that worship her. But perhaps the most glaring piece of evidence in all of this is that Melina's internal file name is actually Daughter of Marika. It may also explain Melina's ability to cast entirely unique Erd Tree spells that no other character in the game can, as well as the abilities of the—
It's done, I just pull it out?
What?
It's done, I just pull it out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just let it sit for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
finger maidens, such as turning runes into strength even though she isn't one. But given that the Tarnished were called back by Queen Marika in the first place, it's easy to see how their motives would align. So like the connections with Ronnie, there's something here, but the exact capacity of which is not yet understood. The final point I want to explore today is the one that I buy into the most, and that is the string of connections between Melina and a character in the lore known as the Gloam-Eyed Queen.
I've heard
For
this.
a basic summary of what this character is, the Gloam-Eyed Queen is a character associated with the Godskins, who was the leader of the Godskin Hunt, a war against the gods. She was the wielder of Destined Death and the Black Flame, but was defeated by Malekith the Black Blade. There's a number of other attributes associated with the Gloam-Eyed Queen, such as that she was a mother to the Godskins, and was also an Empyrean, which put her in direct line for godhood status and a rival of Queen Marika. But how does this connect to Melina? It centers around the Frenzied Flame ending and this dark form of Melina that we can see in the secret cutscene. And the first and most obvious connection here is that this new eye that she possesses is the exact color of a gloaming sky, which would of course qualify her as gloam-eyed. But to dig further into the lore, Melina mentions numerous times throughout the game a close association with the path of Destined Death, which of course leads to Malekith the Black Blade. But Melina's dark form and her gloam eye are only seen if, number one, she is not sacrificed to the giant's flame, and number two, Malekith is defeated and Destined Death is unsealed. So that
True that. I'm sure she'd be quite happy to see Malekith going down then, eh?
already gives her a very suspicious tie to this character, but we can take it even further. If you do go down the path of Frenzied Flame, Melina shows a distinct interest and sympathy for the continuing births in the lands between, as well as a strong interest in the idea of motherhood if you do Bach's questline, questioning what the love of a mother really is, which would of course be a quality of the Gloam-Eyed Queen. Now another interesting factor is that the lore describes that the Gloam-Eyed Queen was defeated by Malekith. Well, if we do Malekith/Gurong's questline, line, he gives us an item called the Beast Eye, which is an eye that can track down Deathroot, a curse that spread due to the use of Destined Death. But some interesting notes about the Beast Eye are that it shares a very distinct blue, which is very similar to the blue we see in Melena's new eye.
Why is Melina so pissed off when you burn the tree without her? So there's more to... Well, the thing, Bridges, is that the Frenzied Flame ending pretty much burns down the whole world. Whereas if you burn Melina as the kindling, it just destroys the tree. Frenzied Flame fucks up the whole world, and she doesn't want the whole world to be destroyed, pretty much.
There are also markings on the Beast Eye which, if flipped horizontally, line up directly with Melina's tattoo. And since this eye was in Malekith's possession, it very well could be the eye of the Glow-Eyed Queen. But on a little side note here, the Beast Eye does appear to be made of stone, and of course the only character made of stone is Queen Marika, who oddly enough is missing an eye. Now my little justification for this theory here is that perhaps after the Glow-Eyed Queen was defeated, she was given rebirth through Queen Marika, which as we know from Renala, results in amnesia. But since the Glow-Eyed Queen was defeated by Malekith, perhaps her body was scorched by the flames of Destined Death, and the rebirth could only give her a soul form like we see from Ranni, and the form that we see in the Frenzied Flame ending is the revival of the Glow-Eyed Queen. But those are the four main avenues of Melina's story that I think hold the most water, and it's also possible that several of them could be true at the same time, since a lot of the evidence does overlap. Now, one thing that we do need to touch on is Melina's tattoo. I've seen a lot of people speculate that it could be representative of the Three Fingers, and would explain her hatred for the Frenzied Flame. However, I don't think that's the case. We have several tattoos for the Three Fingers that we can already give our character, and sigils for the Frenzied Flame don't match up with it at all. It looks like a sort of mix between the Black Knife tattoo and the sigil for death, and given Melina's association with Destined Death, I'd say it's something representative along those lines. But that pretty much wraps up everything we know about Melina and all the speculation surrounding her story. As you can see, there's a lot to unpack here and more questions than answers. But I'll leave all the thoughts up to you guys. What do you think her real identity is? And why do you think we know so little about such a major character? If you would like to discuss more, I recommend joining the channel Discord, which I'll have linked in the description, and likely the pinned comment. But if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here. And with all that, I'll catch you in the next one.
I think that's all very fair speculation. I think any of those are possible. I feel like the Glow-Eyed Queen is pretty darn plausible when you put the eye next to her eye as well. You know, I don't know. I feel like a lot of that information does line up pretty well, though. I would not be surprised if any of those were true. Also, I would love to see more information about that in the DLC. I don't know if it'll be in the DLC coming out, but maybe a future one? Since it seems like the new DLC is going to have to do with Miquella. I don't know. One can hope. I mean, Dark Souls 3 got 2 DLCs, so hopefully Elden Ring gets 2 DLCs as well. We can only hope. Right, Bing? Right, my sweet? Yeah, there's no way that there's not some sort of relation between Ranni and Melina. I know, right, Cirrus? Give me all your money. Honestly, though, like, they will just get money from me. Like, so far, I haven't heard of them having, like, a bad game besides maybe Dark Souls 2, and even then, I think it was just a mechanics thing. I don't know. They have too many other games to work on to have 5 DLCs, Bridges. Although, this is definitely a game that could have 5 DLCs. Demon Souls got none, Dark Souls 1 got 1, Dark Souls 2 got like 4, Dark Souls 3 got 2, Bloodborne got 1. Okay. Dark Souls 2 got 4 DLCs? Holy shit. One was just smaller? Okay. Yeah, I don't know. They added a lot of new mechanics. Story just wasn't as endearing. That's alright. I'll still play it at some point. Bing, you're so cute. I love you. Little purr creature. One only Hadartorius of the Abyss. Neat. Well, I'll have to play it at some point. Too many games. Too many games to play. There could be worse problems. There could be not enough games to play.